So before now, we've been very privileged to have the Mayor of Greater Manchester supporting many of what was the Profile Club's events, continuing on to Cleap 100 and during lockdown having our webinar for Build Back Better. And then more recently in November supporting the Mayor's charity in his work with the Embassy at our lunch in November with Tim Heatley and Sid Williams. There's not much introduction needed, of course. Andy Burnham was elected Mayor of Greater Manchester in 2017 and re-elected for a second term in 2021. And I must say, did an incredible job over the most challenging time for us all with the work over lockdown for the Mayor's charity. As mentioned before, Build Back Better for Manchester and for all the projects like Bed for All working with hospitality for housing the homeless. Prior to being Mayor, Andy was MP for Lee from 2001. In government, Andy has held ministerial positions serving as Shadow Education Secretary and Shadow Home Secretary. He was also a leading figure in the Hillsborough Justice campaign, which is obviously very important for the North. So today, under the Club Manchester, it is my great pleasure to introduce you all the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham. Thank you very much for speaking with us today, Mr. Mayor, and a very warm welcome. We're going to hear from Andy now, and if you have any questions afterwards, please put your hand up, give your name and company and your question afterwards. Thank you very much.
Do I need that or is that one or shall I use it? Hi everyone, oh, thank you very much everybody. How are we doing? Nice to be back out there, isn't it? And gathering again. I was just thinking then, 5 years I've been in this role nearly now coming up, so that's gone over, hasn't it? I thought I was signing up for a quiet life when I left Westminster, but obviously I don't get to go as many parties anymore now. I'm not in the government circle, so this is clearly a work-related event with all the wine on the tables and the cheese. But no, I've never looked back. It's been, God, when I think about what's happened in those 5 years, it's incredible, isn't it? Obviously, 5th anniversary of Manchester Arena attack is coming soon, and that doesn't feel like 5 years ago, does it? But we've been through so many things since then, and it's been a privilege to do this job. So I guess today I'll just maybe set out a bit of what's coming next. Clean air, I think maybe one or two questions might be in the room, so don't be shy. You can ask about all of those as well. I think we just I will spend 10 minutes or so just setting out where we're up to, what the new priorities are going to be, and then obviously we'll get into your questions and people can ask whatever you want. We're actually about to have an event early next month, the future of Greater Manchester, because we think the time has come now to set out again for the next phase, where we're going. We've come a massive distance, haven't we? I look at the city and I'm thinking increasingly it looks just so impressive, doesn't it? It sends a real message of what we can be. We were at the convention of the North yesterday in Liverpool, and Michael Gove spoke. And to be fair, I think the Levelling Up White Paper offers us something. I know it's easy to be cynical and negative, but I'm not doing that, because I think he has set out something that we can work with. We've been offered a fast-track negotiation to deepen our devolution agreement, which is welcome. There's a commitment to London-style public transport and to support us on that, and I'll touch on that in a minute because that's a huge priority for us. So that is government very much backing what we want to do. They've committed to increase research and development spending by 40% over the decade. Again, we've been offered an accelerator as part of that. So there's some really good things that we can work with there. And I think we've got to really be clear now, coming out of the pandemic, where we're going as a city region. And actually, to be honest, we've done all of that thinking, and it's as I say, about to be laid out in early March. Just to kind of touch on some of the headlines, whether we like it or not, I think the drive to net zero has to be a big part of what we're about, because it is where we're heading. And I've always believed that this place has had a habit through the centuries, actually, not just recently, of always bringing on the new, being quick to do that. And as a result of that, getting the benefits of being an early adopter. So we have got a date of 2038 for a zero carbon Greater Manchester. The truth of the matter is, and the clean air experience is relevant in this regard, it's going to be hard. We need to work hard to carry people with that process of change. But I think we can't lose sight of the benefits. The benefits of being the country's leading green city region, I think, are huge. and I think we need to capture those benefits. So we will be laying out that plan alongside the spatial plan. You'll recall the very difficult discussions we've had about spatial planning in Greater Manchester, but we now have a plan that involves 9 of our councils, and as a result of that, we've identified now big growth locations across Greater Manchester where we are looking to bring in high value employment. A big site on the Bury-Rochdale border, the Northern Gateway site, and then down to the south with the airport and Stockport, a big growth corridor there. Salford Crescent, another one. Ashton in Tameside, another one. So we're sort of saying, here's our ambitions, but here are the places where we're looking to bring through those jobs of the future. Connectivity is critical, as I said before. And I think the one thing that will define the next 3 years here is going to be major reform of public transport. For me, that is the thing that's holding us back. The city and the city region is world class in many respects, but certainly not in transport. We're way behind where we should be. So the decision has been taken to bring buses back under public control, and that creates the foundation for what I describe as a London-style public transport system where you can integrate the different modes, so in our case bus and tram, effectively into a single system where it's tap in, tap out. There's a limit on what people can spend no matter how many buses or trams that they take. Sorry to disappoint the traditionalists in the room, but the buses won't be orange and white. We're going for yellow and black. This will be the B network. This will be a branded network across all of Greater Manchester. In time, we want to bring rail, commuter rail, into that vision. Won't be the first stage. That will be integrating the buses and the trams first, but then the B network will expand towards rail as well. So that's the vision. It's good to have government sort of backing for it. We will be the first city outside of London to bring through a London-style public transport system, and for me that will take us to the next level as a city region. It was Time Out magazine last year that said this was the 3rd best place in the world to live, which is not bad, but we don't aim to be 3rd in anything. Actually, Man United would be pleased to be 3rd, actually, I would think these days, but never mind, that's a bit controversial coming from me, but we aim to go higher. And with the levelling up white paper, I think devolution is back in business. I think finally, you know, there's been kind of different views, but I think there's a growing kind of sense now that we're going to need to empower cities now, post-pandemic, if you like, the country needs to be firing on all cylinders, and we'll only be doing that if cities like ours are really freed up to go and to make the changes that we all want to see. So that's really kind of headline sort of set of commitments as to where we're going. And I wondered who that was behind the curtain then for a minute. And I think on that note, I will leave it there.
Can't shut her up.
Can't, no, absolutely. There we go. I'll hand over to you if anybody would like to put any questions or yeah.
Hi Nick, my name's Andy Batty from Creative Marketing Services in Leeds. Welcome to see you. Some mayors finish up as prime ministers. Are you one?
That experiment's not going so great at the moment, is it? The former mayor of London and the top job.
I think you're the only person that could rescue the Renty.
Oh, Carlton. I don't know. I think this. There we go.
The person that could rescue the Renty at the moment.
Oh, that's kind of it. I thought that was a helpful distraction, I think, from the question. And when I left Westminster, I didn't leave with the kind of intention of necessarily going back. You know, it wasn't a stepping stone move, if I could put it that way. I'd kind of fallen out of love with the place, if I'm honest. Hillsborough was mentioned before, and partly the experience of going through all of that, just it kind of really brought over to me how the country is not wired to work for the north, if I could put it that way. And you know, you kind of see how the odds are just stacked against us. And it's not just in an issue like that, it's on everything, isn't it? You know, transport, investment, you know, sadly we do get treated as second-class citizens at times. And I kind of tried to argue for the North within Parliament and kind of felt that, you know, banging my head against a wall really at times. And devolution to me felt as though it was the way in which we could change things and get the voice of the North heard more loudly. And I think that has actually happened. I hope you all feel that too, you know, that kind of our issues are higher up the political agenda now than they've ever been, probably. And, you know, also, in my younger days, perhaps I was a little bit more tribal towards the Red Team in terms of the way you mention it, but I'd kind of drifted away, completely from my own side, but I kind of had become a bit detached generally with just the way politics had become. And the great strength of this role is, and I try and live this, it's about place first, not party first. You know, it's such a different role for that simple reason, because it gives people, you know, wherever you are in your own political views, we all care about the place, don't we? That's why we're all here in this room. And I think these roles, myself and Tracy Brabin, who's your mayor now in West Yorkshire, Steve Rotherham in Liverpool, I think they're just getting going really, and I think they really offer something valuable to the country in the long run if they can properly become established with the right powers behind them. And that's why that further negotiation with the government is really important. So it's a long waffly answer to a good question. I'm avoiding the truth of the matter is, I'm not going to rule out going back, but it wouldn't be any time soon. And who knows, you know, politics can change in a heartbeat, can't it? So I'm definitely going to do a full second term as Mayor of Greater Manchester. These things that we have on at the moment are really important to me. This change to transport, I remember those orange and white buses being replaced by the multicoloured chaos on our streets, and I feel a sense of sort of mission about being involved in putting that right. So I'm not rushing back. If I'm going back at all is the truthful answer. I look at Westminster politics generally, and I think it gets itself into increasing chaos, really. It doesn't connect at all. And the reason it doesn't connect is that point I was saying before about everything party first and point scoring. You know, and then living in that sort of world where they're all cut off from everywhere else and all, you know, I meant the joke about the parties, but when I was in that Tier 3 debate with the government in October 2020, I kind of knew that when I was arguing with Number 10, and we had weeks of arguing before it came out into the final throes of it, I knew they weren't going through what we were going through. I knew they had no clue what it was like for people here. And I just think it's kind of really exposed. We all kind of have our frustrations with politics, but I think the last few years has really exposed it, hasn't it? You know, what's wrong with the way that system works. And I think if I was to go back, it would be really to fundamentally kind of change things and, you know, empower the country more with more devolution and, you know, changing the political system that we've got to make it work better for places and regions than it currently does. So long answer, possibly I guess is the answer, but if it was to happen, it wouldn't be any time particularly soon. There must be a clean air question in the room, surely to goodness. Yeah.
Andy, a couple of questions if I may. 3 years is a long time in politics, and you've done for kind of promoting Manchester down in Westminster. But on the basis, I think we all know in this kind of room here that you will end up back as the new future Labour leader and maybe our future Prime Minister at some point in time. But for Manchester, what plans are you putting in place to find somebody who's going to take over the great work that you've done so far to make sure that Manchester position is going to be at a higher level than it is today? That's number one. And number two is, I drove into Manchester today, and sadly the cycle lanes that are part of everyday existence now for those people commuting into town are empty. Nobody is cycling these days, sadly. That's because of the increased traffic that's on our roads. And so we have cycle lanes that are stopping normal commuters and traffic getting into and out of town. What are you going to do to encourage more cyclists? to make sure those opportunities to kind of be more sustainable and responsible are going to take part of your policy over the next couple of years. Otherwise, I suggest maybe in the short term we give the roads back to the drivers, and more importantly, give them back to the new buses that are going to transform our public transport.
Thank you. So 2 good questions there. You asked me who am I helping nurture to come after. I think Gary Neville's doing a good job himself of he's certainly entering the political space with sort of real force, isn't he? So I don't know whether he would want to do this job or not in the future, but I certainly think establishing it, the best thing I can do is establishing it as a national role, and that's what I've tried to do. I've tried to make devolution here and also what's happening here a national news story, because I felt that was the best thing I could do with my background coming into this role. Not a sort of parochial what's going on somewhere outside of London, but actually becoming a story in and of ourselves. And I think that's happened. I hope that you feel that's happened. Obviously there's more to do there, but I certainly notice coverage has massively increased really over the last 5 years. There's always the media now feel they have to, life outside of London. There's been a big change, and what I want to keep doing is kind of build the role so that a big figure takes it on. I think it's really important. You look back you mentioned, I think, Howard Bernstein, a big figure, Tony Wilson, big figure. Those people have kind of strutted the stage here, haven't they, in the past? And whoever comes after me in this role, whenever it happens, you would want a big national figure, wouldn't you? Or certainly someone from here, but who is known and who could really then keep that sort of sense of challenge going with regard to London. So yeah, I think it's hopefully good work in progress. On cycling, walking, we had the real privilege actually of having Chris Boardman with us for 5 years. Chris has now been taken and given that role at a national level. He's the chair of something called Active England now. And he laid a plan for an incredible segregated cycling and walking system. Now I take your point about lack of usage, and I think this time of year is probably not a great time to judge it, because people probably are less inclined to do it. We've got a bike hire scheme. I don't know if you've all seen that. It's just starting to appear around the city. Obviously the Mobike experience. Mobike was never really supported by us. They just came in and did it, and we had to try and manage it, but it was what we learned from that. But the new scheme has landed now, and landed pretty well. And you'll see it expand quite a lot over the rest of this year, particularly as we get into the spring and summer. You'll see a lot more of those B-bikes around town, and obviously then people might use the infrastructure. If you look at the infrastructure where it's really good and it's designed properly, so Oxford Road is the sort of gold standard. It is used a lot. It really is. It's where it's not designed particularly brilliantly that I think you see the usage fall off. I think you may be hinting at some of the temporary lanes. So the government required those to go in during the 2020 lockdown, and the reason they're still in place is that I think there was a funding agreement that they had to stay in place. So I think some of our councils probably might want to remove them. The minute they can remove them, they possibly will, just because some of them haven't been used in the way that people thought they might be.
I'm just concerned in some of those kind of underused cycle lanes, they're becoming a little bit tired, dirty, poor signage. The kind of traffic cones are looking a bit tired.
Yeah, I agree.
And you're right, if people are wanting to use it with safety in mind, it needs to be done on a more permanent basis. And that's
correct.
Where I was coming to. Do you see the temporary ones becoming permanent, or do you see that those are going to be taken away?
I think quite a few will be taken away, but I think there is a commitment to carry on building permanent segregated provision, because that is what drives the take-up. We got £1 billion. I don't know if you remember seeing this in the news when the government did its spending review. We've got quite a significant devolved capital settlement for transport, and it is going to be very much focused on buses in the next few years. So I talk about yellow and black buses, and that's great, and many of them will be electric. You'll start to see we've got a bit of that around, but it's going to change quite a lot in the next few years. However, we are also going to invest quite heavily in the sort of street architecture. So, raising bus stops so that people can have street level access onto the bus, real-time information on the bus stops. So bus is going to be a big part of the £1 billion, and it will be infrastructure investment on the street side to support the new fleet. So that, I would say, is, we'll carry on, of course, investing in active travel as well, but buses will be some of the space, if you like, will increasingly be given to buses, because once you've got I keep coming back to it. I want a London style system, and what that means to me is £1.55 per journey. You've got to get the price of these buses right down so that they become like they are in London. People in this room will have used buses in London. They really are used by all walks of life. They are. And here they're not. And, they are often empty. A load of our buses are going around carrying sort of 2/3 fresh air, aren't they? And it's ridiculous. Oxford Road, all of them piling down there. And then an estate 2 miles away, nothing at all. The system really doesn't work. So, we're going to completely overhaul this system. £1.55 per journey. In London, you can't spend more than £4.50, even if you took 20 buses in a day. We want the same. So that's the sort of test I'm setting to the government. And then frequency. Like London, people don't have to sort of consult a timetable. You just turn up and one will be there in 10 or so minutes. We want the same. And if we got the same, I think this city would go up another level, basically, in terms of its attractiveness, the quality of life. And later running, it's ridiculous, isn't it? I was out last night, and I live in near Lee, and to get home, I have to get, the last train is 10:20 last night. It's absolutely madness, isn't it? A city like this where you can't get public transport, after 11 o'clock. I like going to the Albert Hall. I've never seen an encore at the Albert when I go to a gig there, because I've always got to run and get the train. It's absolutely so getting later running public transport to support our ambitions as the third best city in the world as Time Out, so because of our nightlife, we need a transport system to keep supporting that, don't we?
Andy, sorry, Gary.
Yes.
I work for Nearly Hotels.
Yeah, great hotel, by the way.
As a Liverpool fan, I was going to talk to you initially about Everton, but probably not. At the moment, it's not fair.
Well, our latest New Dawn came crashing down last night, so please don't talk about that.
We had Everton staying in our Newcastle hotel, and I was kind of getting blamed for that.
Did you give them a good night's sleep? Is it your fault?
Yeah, listen, you talked about the clean air zone, so it's just really a bit of an update, I suppose, from you on where it's at, where it's up to then, because it's obviously something that's quite important at the moment with you.
Absolutely. So it's been one of the hardest issues I've ever dealt with, if I'm honest. People, I don't know if this came over, but we're all being required to do it. Birmingham have got one, Bath have got one, London have obviously got a massive one, Newcastle, because the air in most English cities breaches legal standards, legal limits. And the government at UK level lost a court case, I think it was in 2013 or 14. Client Earth, the environmental legal organisation, took a case, the government lost, then the government had to then act to, and we all ended up with this order to clean up the air. In our case, all 10 boroughs have places within the boroughs where the air standards are illegal. So there are 152 sites where that is the case in Greater Manchester, hence this problem we have of it being a big zone. And everyone was saying to me, well, why so big? And the reason for that is you couldn't have 150 mini clean air zones, because no one would have a clue, would they, about getting around and how that would make sense. So it's a kind of really challenging situation. We were given a legal direction, so every council in Greater Manchester was given a legal direction to reduce air pollution beneath legal limits by 2024. And the plan was developed on that basis. And what happened was, it was a plan, if you like, built for a different world pre-pandemic. And it came crashing into the new world post-pandemic in the new year, and obviously it doesn't make sense. And I was quite clear about that with the government. We'd seen last year the price of vehicles just going up and up, cars to a degree, HGVs as well, but vans particularly, you know, and the availability really restricted. I don't know if you've all experienced that in your businesses as well. So I was getting TFGM to do research, and by January we'd come to the conclusion that 2024 was not achievable anyway, because there simply weren't the vehicles to get us there. And the worst thing was then, it would start to look like a money-raising scheme to the public, because people can't change, stuck with having to pay a charge, and they would think that was our real intention all along, but it never was. And I know people will take some convincing about that, but it really isn't. The clean air zone will last as long as it takes to get the air to legal standards, and the minute that it's there, it will be finished, it will turn off. It was always meant to be an incentive scheme, you know, funding to help people change their vehicle, and the minute we'd got enough vehicles changed, the thing would go. So, to cut a long story short, we basically spent all of January in negotiations with the government. We had to get that legal direction lifted off our councils, because they were forced to carry on trying to implement it the longer it was in place, hence the signs and the cameras and everything starting to go up. But we were saying to them, it just isn't achievable. Eventually, a minister came up here last Friday, we sat down, we talked it through properly, and they agreed to lift the legal direction and replace it with one based on 2026. And what we are now going to do is work up a joint plan with them to get there in a much more manageable way than would have been done with the plan that we had, which was, as I say, the pre-pandemic plan. And I've said to them that it might need more money, because the money that was being offered, the grant, didn't make it doable for people. You know, the cost of vehicles is such that the grant support was just not enough. But obviously 2026 gives us a chance to see the market correct itself and become more stable again, and therefore the prices come down. We think we might be able to keep this as what's called a Category B clean air zone, which would just cover buses, HGVs and taxis. It might be possible in this sort of period now to get to compliance with just that, but we can't guarantee that until we've done the work. So, or vans might have to be in a sort of smaller zone, if you like, just where the Category B might reduce the pollution in enough places, but then we might need just a more targeted sort of extra zone around. So we're trying to do it in a way that minimises the pressure on people, but cleans up the air. And I just think this is the frustration a little bit. The benefits of it have been lost, and it's really important that, you know, we don't just sort of cave in to those who say scrap the clean air zone. Well, we're not going to scrap the clean air zone. There will be a Greater Manchester clean air zone. It is coming in. There is no doubt about that. The government are insistent on that as well. So this isn't a, you know, we're not just defending it, and it's both government and Greater Manchester are saying there needs to be a clean air zone. And just to illustrate to you why, you know, this isn't a totally terrible idea, buses already have been changing. If you go back to 2018, 10% of buses on our roads met emission standards. And it was kind of outrageous, to be honest with you, that in this city, bus operators were putting some of their oldest fleet on the roads, particularly on the school services. You know, you often go to a school at closing, you know, leaving time, and there's about 10 really old buses there spewing out all kinds of, you know, just not right. I mean, that shouldn't be happening in a place like this. Now, as a result, even the threat of the clean air zone means that 80% are either compliant or about to be compliant, because the arrangements are in place to replace the buses. So it is having a beneficial impact, and I know that can easily get lost. But yeah, that's where we're up to with the clean air zone. So what we're going to do now is work with the government on a joint plan, which is going to be agreed in July, and then we're going to work to start to introduce it carefully from October. But it's going to be done carefully, jointly, full consultation with people, learning from the stressful situation that everyone's been in earlier this month. So I hope that's a full answer.
Geraldine Ryan from CMS. Just, you've talked about clean air, you've talked about transport, those are all really important. But what is the other big challenge for the Greater Manchester Combined Authority? What else is the big focus?
Oh my goodness, there's so much I could say in response to that, because there is a huge amount of work going on lots of levels. I think it's pandemic recovery, I guess, would be the thing I would put quite, right up the list. we have had a tough time, but particularly some of our residents who, let's say, are the lowest paid, whose housing is not the best. Some of the communities where there's a lot of people in low paid, insecure work have had the highest COVID rates all the way through. You know, it's really hit a lot of places very hard indeed. So tackling some of those issues is a massive, massive thing for us. And I'm going to say this today because it's really important to, you know, to be able to ask you all to consider this. We think one of the things that we've all got to reflect on coming out of this is the fact that in 2020, particularly, and to a degree in 2021, there were people who didn't stay at home because their job never allowed that, you know, because they were in a profession or a workplace where it stayed open all the way through. But also they were paid in such a way that even if they were ill, they couldn't go home because they wouldn't be paid. And if they were asked to isolate, they couldn't do the same because they wouldn't be paid. You know, that whole culture of very casual 0 hours work. It's our view, myself and the 10 leaders of Greater Manchester, that kind of approach to things in the end doesn't work for anybody. It doesn't even work for those companies that are employing people in that way, because obviously it just creates the conditions for poor health in the workplace of everybody, and then may affect business continuity. So there is something that's already in place called the Greater Manchester Good Employment Charter, and my ask of you is to look it up if you're prepared to do that. This is a purely voluntary thing, but it's about saying, how can we from the bottom up here improve the quality of people's work to give people more security, perhaps a little more flexibility coming out of the pandemic. You know, the mixing of working from home and a bit of working in the office as well, that's not a bad thing, is it? And if we can keep some of that for people going forward. We're going to link that Greater Manchester Good Employment Charter to all public procurement in the city region. So it doesn't mean you won't win a contract if you're not a Greater Manchester Good employer. It just means that it's more likely that you will win a public contract. And so that is a very, you know, tackling some of these underlying issues that we have is a huge priority. Alongside that, housing was a second big cause of spread of the virus. So we're bringing forward a Greater Manchester Good Landlord Charter for the private rented sector, and also I see a major opportunity in retrofitting homes as we go into this period when we're working towards 2038 for a zero carbon city region. If you think about this, we're going to have to retrofit every home in the country in the next 30 years. Why don't we get on with it quicker here? Because there are thousands and thousands of good jobs to be had in building a workforce to retrofit homes. Those young people who get those skills could then take those skills to other parts of the country. If we've gone earlier, you know, we give them a competitive advantage by going earlier. But the homes that then get improved can help promote better health of the people who live there, lower energy bills. You know, we think retrofitting is a very big opportunity for the city region to carry out home improvement across a sort of mass scale. And so, you know, that is a very big focus for us at the moment. And I want us to be a leader in that, because I see economic benefits for the city region multiplying down the decades if we really do get our, you know, nowhere in the country has currently got its act together on retrofitting. We've got a public sector retrofitting program, so schools and libraries and other public buildings are being retrofitted now. That's happening now. But from those small beginnings, we want to build it quickly into a sort of, you know, large-scale retrofitting program, and that's about sort of not just always talking about the new, you know, the shiny new industries we want to bring in. That's about improving the standards of living in all of our communities on a much wider basis. So I hope that answers the question.
Do you want to mention our year children and the our year children and Greater Manchester City Council's initiative around our year 2022? Are you not involved in that directly?
I think that's a City Council initiative. Yeah. Better not. You know what politicians are like when they can try and waffle away on anything. But no, I'll leave that with them.
Hi, can I just ask you about the Homelessness Project, where that is now up to? I appreciate it's been extremely successful to date, but where is it going forward?
Yeah, so thanks for asking about that. I think you had Embassy, didn't you, recently? Yeah, I was really pleased to hear that some of you may have seen their presentation. They've got an amazing thing they're doing down in Castlefield, which would be great if you could support it. But this is an area where I think we can say, quite proudly, we've made a huge change. So in 2017, the homelessness situation was actually spiralling a bit out of control, to be honest. On my first day in the job, I did a walk about the city centre at 6 o'clock, and it was just it was unbelievable. It was, there was just people everywhere, all the way down Market Street, all the way over Piccadilly Gardens, and we've worked really hard basically at turning things around. So the official homelessness count in that year was around 300 people sleeping rough across the 10 boroughs, which is probably an understatement, but that's what the official count was. Last year it was 89. So still 89 too many, but it's a very big turnaround, and the figures are just coming down and down and down every year. And the reason why they're doing that is because we now have infrastructure in place to support people away from the street if they sleep rough. And actually we have an infrastructure in place that means people won't be left sleeping rough for weeks before they get help. Pretty much we can pick them up as soon as they fall because of a bed every night, which is the main scheme that I introduced. It looks after 600 people every night. So it is precarious, let me be honest with you, because obviously there are 600 people in a bed every night who are one step away from the street. If I couldn't fund a bed every night anymore, or some of the councils pulled out of it because they couldn't, you would quickly see sadly a change again. So it's precarious, but it is there. We have to work really hard to fund it. I fund it partly through the Mayor's charity and a whole range of things that we do, some public funding that goes in as well. But it is definitely an investment that's worth making. It costs. This is the thing about homelessness that is just, you'll understand it, all of you as business people, but sometimes the public sector, I don't think, understands this well enough. The cost of having one person supported in a bed every night, if they stayed a year, is about £11,000. Crisis, the homelessness charity, estimate the cost of somebody sleeping rough in a chaotic fashion for a year at £20,000. And it's just, sometimes the public sector will carry on doing the picking up the pieces crisis thing and not do the investing up front thing. And I think a bed every night has kind of confronted them with that. And to be fair, the NHS contributes to it, GMP contribute to it, the probation service contribute to it. So we've kind of got now a sort of an approach where everyone's buying in and are funding it. So I hope it can continue. Certainly as long as I'm there, it will continue. And allied to a bed every night, we've got something called Housing First, which is a government pilot that they've just extended for us, and we're really grateful to them for that. Housing First is something that kind of has been imported from Finland, basically, which is a philosophy that says give people a home and no time limits on recovery, and give them lots of personal support. So bricks and mortar, but also support. And you know what, it works. We've had 300 people through our Housing First scheme, because they go from a bed every night then to Housing First, which is a step beyond the temporary accommodation. And 90% of them have sustained their tenancies, which is way beyond what anybody thought it would do. And the reason why it works is because you kind of lift people out of the rules of the housing and the benefit system. You just give them time. You almost set them up to succeed rather than set them up to fail, which is what we do too often in this country. So a bed every night combined with Housing First is making a real sustained change now. And Housing First is committed to 2024. It really does go back to what I was saying a moment ago, though. I'm of the view that we should guarantee people a good, safe home, because it's a foundation for everything in life, and we'd spend so much less money on the costs of failure if we had good housing for everybody. It's proven, I think, through what we're doing in homelessness, but you could take that principle much wider with the retrofitting and support people properly with a good home, and then kids get a good education, everyone gets good health and good life. And I personally think, and maybe this is my politics speaking, but the mantra that we've had in this country under all governments from the 80s, 90s and 2000s, that the market solves everything. The truth of the matter is it can do in some ways, but not everything. It hasn't solved buses, and it hasn't solved housing because it's left too many people here without homes or transport that they can afford. So I think there is a need to intervene to correct those failings, and increasingly I think the government are sort of seeing what we're saying as well. So thanks for asking. I think it's a really good success story. 89 is too many, but we turned around what was a crisis really at the time, and thousands of people now have benefited.
And just on the back of that, I know during lockdown a lot of hotels in the city supported, didn't they, with that. What happened when that finished, and were people unfortunately put back on the street, or were they, because they were obviously people that wanted a bed as such, because there's a lot that they didn't want a bed, I suppose. Did they get housed straight away, or were they unfortunately have to go back? So
it's a good question. So we were doing what the government eventually did nationally anyway. Everyone in is what the government called it nationally. But we did expand a bed every night with hotel provision, as you said. The change that we made was through the hotel experience, and some of the hotels were brilliant, by the way. They really helped us. A bed every night pre-pandemic was sort of dormitory provision, so a row of 10 beds in it, and everyone in forced us to think more about single room. So for the same reasons I was giving a moment ago, people will recover when they've got their privacy back, their dignity, self-esteem, and we've now kept that principle of bed every night. So bed every night is now single room, not completely but largely single room, and everyone who was in a hotel got an offer of a bed every night place. That's why it's 600. It was running at about 400 pre-pandemic. So, but that has enabled us to make a proper change, because some people came indoors who wouldn't go indoors when the pandemic landed, and we've kept them supported through this. So yeah, thank you to everyone who was involved in the industry who helped us with that. I visited the Holiday Inn in Gorton, and it was just fantastic what they did there. They had all the services coming in every day on the same site. So some of the principles of that we're trying to carry forward now in our permanent provision.
Something that we supported that here, but it was something that it's a tough decision to take as a business, isn't it?
Yeah.
We were approached 3 or 4 times, weren't we, Ruth, and do I want that? And kind of think, well, 200 bedrooms empty, but there was a worry of what people think, perception, because it certainly wasn't a money-making thing for us at all. But we ended up doing it, and it was quite sad. We had a certain team obviously that were looking after it, but it was sad, and we had no issues, no problems. It was fully decorated afterwards, and anything that it was left probably better than it was before, to be fair. But
I'm just going to say good on you for doing it.
Really,
I can see it was a bit of a leap of faith, but good on you for doing it, because it's definitely made a difference.
People that didn't even want to sleep on a bed you could still sleep on the floor in the room, and the stories that we were hearing were kind of quite touching, really.
Definitely, you made a difference. Thank you.
One more question.
Could run a bit beyond 2 if that helped, if you wanted to. Yeah.
Not questions for kind of thought that you had in terms of carry on with the homelessness thing. We kind of obviously got this pressure on the local councils to keep on funding this, which is proving challenging. There's other areas that they can also focus on. And I appreciate that this sounds much more simple than it definitely is. But we've got so many property developers want to invest in Manchester, being the third best city in the world to live.
You're buying the spin there. I like that.
Is there not an opportunity somewhere along the line through some type of process that actually, if you want to build in Manchester, that there is some sort of fee, tax, levy, I don't know what it would be, that actually would then automatically go into that pot to ease the pressure for councils and gives a little bit more longevity with that project?
It's a brilliant thought, and it's exactly what should happen. It's just the planning law doesn't, at the moment, doesn't allow that kind of conditionality. It should do. Many of the developers get a bad reputation, but they don't deserve it, because they do support us. Tim Heatley chaired the Mayor's Charity, still does, from Capital and Centric. So I think there was that programme Manktopia, which people had different views about. It tried to portray a thing that it was uncaring. It was all about the gleaming buildings and not. Well, actually, we're doing both. It's not the case that we're neglecting other housing. And actually, most of our councils are getting back into building homes for social rent or council homes. So Manchester have just made a big commitment in that space. So in an ideal world, yes, I would love it if we could do that. One of our asks as part of the devolution, this is where it gets maybe tricky for some people in the room, but we do need more power to raise funding at a local level to support the bed every night and things that we think are important. You know, most cities in Europe have a tourist tax. You know, not a big one, but you know, they have it. People are familiar with paying it. We don't in any English city. So, you know, we are looking at things like that, asks of that kind, when we're going to the government for more devolved control. It's not, you know, not talking about massive things, but you know, just things that would help us become more self-sufficient as a city region, rather than always asking the government with a begging bowl, is what we're looking at. Is that right? Bless you. The quietest, nicest sneezes I've ever heard, though. Shall I take one round of questions? Are you wanting to finish soon, or?
No, I'll just say Jessica, Rosa, Jill, did you have a question? Yeah. And then anyone and
Shall I take a round of questions and then let everyone speak, and then I'll do a final thing?
So I'm Jess from Hotel Football.
Bolton?
Hotel Football.
Hotel Football, sorry, I said Bolton. Sorry, yeah.
I was trying to do a posh accent then, so you didn't hear the band.
You don't need to, you don't need to.
Probably slightly different topic now. At the end of last year, you did a really big campaign, which was "Is this okay?" And that actually sparked quite a lot of feedback, commentary from our team, especially being in hospitality, about some of the incidents and things that our team come up against. So we do a lot of engagement surveys, etc. But that, and nothing's ever come forward, but that seems to spark quite a lot. So we're now in a bit of a focus group within the hotel, looking at kind of what both our male and female colleagues kind of deal with, especially where we are next to the stadium. Like a match day is a minefield of people. It's probably more, I think I was telling you about this, Gary, actually, when we were at the event the other week. And I think it's just how we can maybe impact that and get on board with you guys and what you're doing, just to kind of get the message out there. I think we're always really concerned because of our owners. If we give feedback in a way to a guest and they don't take it lightly, it goes straight on social, and all of a sudden we're always there, guest first, etc. But actually now we're in a case where we want to protect our colleagues. So it's probably more maybe information on how can we work a bit more closely and do maybe something a bit bigger.
Great. Well, I'm going to come back to that. Thank you. Yeah.
I was just going to ask you about HS2, because the last time I heard there was some kind of Viking ruins or some kind of Roman settlement that unravelled. So I just wondered, how much is it costing you and us, and you know, where are we up to? Because I know it was something that's really paramount to you. So. Yeah,
no problem. Come back to that one as well. Yep.
Don't mind to Hampshire Club. We've obviously got India back this summer for the one day international. I just wondered if there was another delegation going out with the Manchester England Partnership, very similar to the trip we did a few years ago. Are you happy with that as a fellow Evertonian?
Right, I'll think of my politician's answer to that one. Yeah.
Hi, Andy, I'm Rosie from the Loyalty Co. And my question's a bit more personal nature, but I wondered what you're doing to assist city centre leaseholders with the current flooding crisis, because I get the impression that it's affecting a lot of young professionals like myself who've invested in property in the city centre.
Yeah, absolutely. Terrible situation that you've all been left in, isn't it? So, yeah, absolutely. Was there any more before I finish and wrap up? Right. Thank you. So, is this okay? I don't know if anyone in the room also knows what this is, because it's a really important campaign. If I could just explain briefly what it is. Last year when Sarah Everard was murdered, and there were some other awful incidents as well, weren't there, that followed, I guess, if I'm being honest, because I am the dad of 2 teenage girls now, I've kind of tuned in more than I ever have done before. I'm just going to be honest. And I bet it's probably true of other blokes in the room, you know. I'd never thought enough about how behaviour leads to unacceptable, you know, intimidation, harassment, whatever. And I don't think we've done enough to call it out amongst ourselves, amongst our friends. You know, I think there's been hasn't been enough focus on it as an issue. And I think what really brought it home to me was when, in the aftermath of what happened to Sarah, there was sort of talk about women should do this, or you know, shouldn't wear that, or don't walk home this way because you're putting yourself at risk. It was all like women should do this, that, and the other. And it was like, what? It's all on men, lads, and boys, isn't it? That's where it is, and we're the ones who need to take responsibility for this and make change. So what happened was I made a commitment to lead a sort of conversation about this amongst, I'm being honest, men, lads, boys across Greater Manchester. And it came forward at the end of last year, is this okay? Is the banner. And I don't know if anyone saw the video, but it was a girl out running, and there was some of the incident, and then it was through a day, wasn't it? And then at the end of it, she turns to the camera and says, is this okay? And we couldn't believe the impact it had, to be honest. It's had over 5 million views, and it's kind of clearly caught something that wasn't being focused on enough. And the idea now is to develop the campaign throughout this year. So I went into a school in Rochdale last week and began a conversation there with the students, and it was just amazing, to be honest with you, because some of the young women students were saying things and the lads were then responding, and it was just to hear them. They started to have the conversation amongst themselves, and it was like, right, this is something really important. But we want to take it into different settings, and so you're asking something really important there about hospitality and the nighttime economy. Because I think people who work in not just hotels, but you will get behaviour, you will encounter it, won't you, all of the time, that is beyond the line and is not okay. And I think if there's appetite from you, I could get the team behind the campaign to come to an event and show the video and share some of the thinking. Because maybe we could look at one with Sasha Lord, our nighttime economy advisor, that is very much linked to hospitality and the nighttime economy, and empower you as an industry to talk about that and what you might do with some of the materials, and whether it could be put into more public-facing materials in some of your settings. I think it really brought home to me how there's a massive need for this conversation, really massive, and it's got to be one where, unequivocally and unapologetically, we're pointing at men, lads and boys and saying, no, it's one for you, it's one for us. We've got to own it. We've got to decide what we're going to do about it. If we're going out on a night out and we're with somebody in our group who is engaging in that type of behaviour, we've got to pull people up, call them out, and then it gets into things like spiking, because it gets into that territory as well, isn't it? Any bloke who knows one of their friends that does anything like, you've just got to completely, it's crime. You've got to report them. You're interested.
Involved in any way.
Yeah.
I think from hotel football's point of view, we're working on a piece that inevitably will end up being displayed on a match day. So it's a similar video, but it's our.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
Actually, throughout the building, each screen will be turned off, switched off. So while we've got everybody's attention on that match day pre-match, we're going to make everybody watch it.
Oh, brilliant.
So it's like whatever we can do in the meantime, like happy to.
Something really powerful here, isn't there? Because we would prefer it, rather than it's always us making the materials, that people take the banner but build out the campaign slightly organically and use the strapline, if you like, but do your own kind of materials that might work for different industries or different settings. So if it's of interest, I can ask the team behind it to come down and present the thinking. Yeah, I think it's a really important thing, so great. Thanks for asking about it. On HS2, it is, in the integrated rail plan, it is coming to Manchester. Leeds and Bradford got a much rougher deal, so we got a better deal, but it's still not right, I don't think, for any of us. And it's that critical east-west bit that links to HS2 is not right. So we're still arguing with the government about it. Piccadilly station could become the sort of canary wharf of a resurgent north of England, couldn't it? It will be the beating heart of the north of England. And yet they're building HS2 completely on the surface, or they're trying to, because it's cheaper to do that. They want to just take away all of our development land and turn it all into a sprawling surface train station. And we are still not giving in on it. We're not, we believe it should be a continental level, you're on the top level for the normal train services, one down for HS2, one down for Northern Powerhouse Rail, down again for Metrolink. We believe that's what Piccadilly should be. So myself and the new leader of Manchester City Council, Bev Craig, we're working together on it to try and change the bill that's now in Parliament. And obviously we do need business support. We want an underground station at Piccadilly, and we want a full brand new east-west line that goes via Bradford to Leeds. I think they are uncovering all kinds of things, aren't they, along the route. But you know, for us, this is about the right rail solution for the north, not just for this century and the next century. This will determine the nature of our economy for decades. And at the moment, it's not the right plan. And so the bill, as it goes through Parliament, we are formally going to petition against it as Greater Manchester to try and change it, to get it to where we want it. I know it's been controversial, but you know, we do need good north-south connectivity. But I would say even more important is that east-west connectivity. And we are not going to give in, and we're working with Bradford, Leeds, Liverpool. We're all together on it, and we're going to keep fighting it. So,
where are we at with Newcastle? Because obviously that's another main route, but it's a bit of a chugger to get there.
Well, we were at the convention of the North yesterday, and the mayor up there was pointing out how they don't even have a motorway. You know, they often get completely cut out of the picture. And the idea was to take Northern Powerhouse Rail, which was what we all call the North as one as backed, and we said we'd prioritise that over HS2 if you gave us the choice. Newcastle was included in that, but they've gone for this much more shrunken version. So I don't know if you've seen the rail plan that the government's put forward, but it's half a new line to Huddersfield, and then it merges into the Victorian line there. We think that's a recipe for 15 years of total disruption on that main Manchester-Leeds corridor as they build a complicated new. So we just think it's wrong. They've got the wrong plan. So we won't be giving up on it. And there was a lot of determination on that front at the Convention of the North yesterday. So an ongoing story is the answer, not finished yet. And certainly we won't be happy until we get a better answer. So on India, the Manchester-India partnership is going great guns. We're doing a trip to Bangladesh and Pakistan later this year. So if the cricket club wanted to be involved in that, as you were with our trip to India a couple of years ago, please do. 2024 is the answer to your question. Sorry, 2023, I should say. We're going back to India. So that'll be the next delegation. But you can definitely come on the Pakistan, Bangladesh one if that's of interest as well. Frank Lampard, well, how can I put it? I'm all in favour of Tories coming up to the north to level us up. And if he levels up Everton Football Club, then I'm absolutely 1,000,000% in favour of him. Now, I'm pleased. I think Everton needed a bit of a new mindset, let's say. People say give it to Wayne Rooney or give it to Duncan Ferguson. I think the time has come to bring in something new. A younger manager. I don't think these older managers work anymore. Rafa didn't work, I can assure you of that. That was a painful experience for us all. I bet you, did he ever feel right for you? But the idea of these managers that want to throw teacups around the changing room, and you need a younger manager, I think, these days. So I'm in favour of Frank. I think he'd be good for Everton. So last night, notwithstanding. And cladding, we are doing a lot, and we've supported residents affected over the last, that's almost coming up 5 years since Grenfell now, isn't it? Which is also unbelievable. So we have a high-rise task force, and Greater Manchester Fire and Rescue Service lead that. Have you been in touch with them at all? You shouldn't. No, we 100% support you, and all the cladding demonstrations we've been on. Manchester Gladiators have done a brilliant job. We support them 100%. Myself and the Mayor of Salford, who leads on housing for Greater Manchester, and we'll continue to do that. And we keep nudging the government a bit further. You're absolutely right about the height issue. So high rise is only 18 metres and over. I don't know if people remember that fire in Bolton at the student accommodation, that was like 17.5 metres. So the idea that you just have you don't focus on buildings like that, absolutely ridiculous. But also it was riddled with not just cladding problems, but building design problems as well, which is what you're describing. So I said I'm keen to be fair. Michael Gove again has been better on this issue, I think, than his predecessors. And I think there's no point constantly doing half a job. They've got to do the whole job, haven't they? It's not your fault. In the end, I think government and industry need to come together. They need to do all the works and then work out who's responsible for what element of the cost. It's as simple as that, really, as far as I can see. Yeah, and we'll keep fighting for that for you, I can assure you. Well, that's been good. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for your questions. Only one on the clean air zone. You're so kind to me, honestly. Thanks so much.
Great. Oh,
So I'll hand back.
And,
No worries.
hope to see you again later in the year.
No worries.
Thank you. Right, we're going to search it, and then I will speak a little bit about what's happening with the club shortly and the events that